As a person in late 20s, I'm starting to realize that the first decade of 21st century is becoming for me as nostalgic as 90s are for millennials. Only few years ago my generation was laughing at boomers, but right now more and more people in my age are starting to say, things used to be a little bit better by the time, huh? And of course that's not only the matter of music, phones, games, series and the whole pop culture, but also cars. Of course, you can argue whether Toyotas used to be better 20 years ago or they are better now, or for example if BMW was better in Chris Bangle era rather than Van Hooydonk era, but one thing is rather obvious. For Dodge, things used to be way better by the time. If you compare the golden period of 2000s to the current stage of Dodge run by Stellantis, you are about to cry. And you may probably wonder what this weird and rather unknown tiny MPV has to do with this also rather forgotten crappy rebadging of Alfa Romeo, which you may not know, but it's still available to buy in US and Canada. Well, both of these cars are called Hornet, and both of these cars were about to be game changers. With a consistent marketing, the first one could be an actual game changer, while the second one was destined to fail. This two-faced story of Hornet nameplate is showing how Dodge position has declined and how bad management of the current venture capital car corporations are destroying everything what only 20 years ago was a great value among many car brands.
The Dodge Hornet RT, the totally torqued out crossover.
But let's go back to 2006. Imagine that by that time Dodge and Chrysler weren't perceived well. It was mostly because of controversial affair between Chrysler and Daimler, which by many people was perceived as a non-equal relationship. Despite all sins in German period, Dodge had one of the greatest relaunches of their latest years. With the debut of Caliber compact hatchback, Dodge decided that they will change its image. Design will be more muscular, more controversial, but also more modern, more sleek, and they will expand on global markets. In the middle of the first decade of the 21st century, Dodge had all to succeed with these plans. If you compare Caliber to Neon, which this car was directly replacing, you can see how big leap forward was made with the launch of Caliber. This car targeted younger audience was looking like concept car. You can see it even more when you park Caliber next to cars like Toyota Corolla or Volkswagen Golf. Dodge Caliber was cool, and it was the stuff you actually want to buy. And for Dodge, it was only beginning, because in 2007 they launched a Nitro SUV and mid-size sedan called Avenger. 1 year later, the mid-size crossover Journey was launched, and it wasn't still the end, because, especially for European market, a subcompact hatchback called Hornet was planned. As a sneak peek was treated the concept called Hornet. It was presented in 2006 and was showing the very close to production form of a planned car. But what happened? A big crisis happened. A financial breakdown of the Chrysler Group meant that they need to cancel most of their projects. Except for the performance coupe Circuit EV, they also decided to scrap the Hornet project. When Fiat came to save Chrysler from bankruptcy, officially Hornet name wasn't killed, but technically Italians didn't want this project to be continued. It may sound crazy, but during the 5-year period of preparing this car for launch, Dodge Hornet was meant to have a few different counterparts. In the period of Daimler Chrysler, Dodge Hornet was meant to be based probably on Volkswagen Polo. Later, they switched to Nissan. Some say earlier even Mitsubishi was on cards. When Italians came, they were saying that Hornet maybe won't be killed, but they will use the Italian platform. But FCA decided to make so extensive changes in the initial project of Hornet that it was actually a way different car. Because in the end, the new small car of Dodge was born as Dart. And obviously it wasn't that small, because this car was compact sedan, so a replacement for bigger caliber.
Make it fun to drive. Give it a huge touchscreen. Bigger, good. A customizable dash display. Now give it Wi-Fi.
What's even worse, by the time Fiat decided to discontinue Dodge brand in Europe in favor of merging it, or actually merging only one Dodge model, into Fiat portfolio. Sadly, the Dart sedan wasn't included in this plan, and it was sold only in China with Fiat badges. And what about subcompact Dodge? Well, this project was killed for good. When in early 2021 Stellantis was born, each of brands received some roadmap for the upcoming years. Dodge was among these brands which was crying for any new model. Because believe me or not, since launch of the early mentioned Dodge Dart in 2012, Dodge did not have any new car for the next decade. Yes, decade. For example, if in 2019 you were looking for a new car from Dodge, you could choose from cars which were mostly designed in the middle of 2000s. So actually you could still take some fruits from the infamous and already forgotten marriage of Daimler and Chrysler. Of course, petrolheads and diehard fans of muscle cars were happy because Challenger and Charger were kept in the same form for the whole second decade of 21st century. But if you are talking about young families, soccer moms, boomers, and or rather normal shoppers for cars, sadly they had nothing to choose from when they were coming to Dodge dealership. I'm expecting having cars for these demographics as well because, well, for the whole 20th century, Dodge was meeting different expectations and they had a lot of different cars rather than just aging muscle cars in crazy expensive prices. Acknowledging all these problems, in 2021, Dodge was saying that, hey, we can actually launch something new and we can take advantage of one of our brothers. This brother, or rather sister, was Alfa Romeo, which in this time was preparing for launch of the new car, a compact crossover Tonale. By the way how Alfa Romeo was neglected was even more criminal than in case of Dodge. Shortly after rumors of the planned expansion of the Dodge lineup, it's been said that the new car of Dodge will be a compact SUV and it will be probably called Hornet. It was rather obvious that it won't be that small as a concept car from 2006, because the planned new Hornet, or rather the first production Hornet, was meant to be a bigger car in compact form. Despite rumors that the car will be produced in Italy and it will be sharing platform with Alfa Romeo Tonale, nobody was expecting what is actually prepared. When in automotive internet in February 22 some random spy photos emerged, it was like a slap in the face. Because the new Dodge, which was meant to be a brother for Alfa Romeo Tonale, was actually just a crappy and extremely lazy rebatch. They just taken off the Scudetto, added some weird holes in the hood and changed the details in the interior. That was all. After 10 years of waiting, it was all what Dodge was capable to create. I remember that by that time many people were saying, come on guys, it won't be as bad as it seems to be. It maybe is some testing mule, like the technology is under the body, but the whole body itself is just a prototype.
Say hello to our new little friends. This is the all-new Dodge Hornet.
But to prove that we are all wrong, in August 22, the final production Dodge Hornet was launched. Yep, they did some changes regarding the engines, they did some attempts to at least differ this car from Alfa Romeo Tonale, but the truth was brutal. The first new Dodge product was simply a lazy rebatch. And if you compare the final modern-day Dodge Hornet to the way how this car was meant to look 20 years ago, well, maybe the 26 concept wasn't the prettiest car in the world, but at least it looked like a Dodge. It had some character, it had some unique design, and overall was a creative project done on scratch. So many may think what Dodge was thinking when they were preparing the modern-day Dodge Hornet for launch. Well, as it happens very often in modern-day automotive corporate world, cars like Hornet are meant to make money. It can be boring, it can be uninspiring, but at least it should bring some cash. And I think it's obvious then in their latest years Dodge is desperate of making any cash. We cannot blame Carlos Tavares of the mistakes of the Sergio Marchionne era, but I think one thing is obvious. He could do better to restore the importance of the Dodge brand in American market. Only 2 years after the launch of Dodge Hornet, it was obvious that this car is a big flop, and customers cannot be fooled that easily.
Fool me once, shame on you. It fooled me, we can't get fooled again.
In September 24, it was reported that Dodge Hornet is one of the slowest selling cars in the whole North American market. Dodge dealers were complaining that they are having more than 14,000 cars catching dust in the parking lots. For the perspective, Dodge by that time was able to sell only 1,500 cars in the specter of 45 days. It meant that market check for the new Dodge Hornet was brutal. It won't shock you that with the current shape of political events in North America, selling Dodge Hornet became very difficult in the second half of the 25th year. Because of the tariffs, Dodge Hornet, which is imported from the Italian factory of Alfa Romeo, became too expensive. And with that, since the summer of 2025, this car isn't technically produced. So if for some weird reason you really want to build your own Dodge Hornet from scratch, it's actually no longer possible. You can rather choose from thousands of cars which are still catching dust in hundreds of Dodge dealer parking lots. And who knows, maybe things would look a little bit better for Dodge if they at least put some effort.